So, without further ado, I think I'm going to have Mr. Weiss come up here and enjoy his opening remarks.
Thank you, Marcy. Again, my name is not Mr. Weiss, it's Tom. And if you run into me, I'd appreciate if you call me Tom. Thank you. Is that better? Whoa. Again, she referred to me as Mr. Weiss. My name's Tom. So if we run into each other, call me Tom, please. Okay. Welcome to the August Village Values. I've been on the board for 4 short months. And I tell you what, one of my responsibilities on the board is being the board liaison with the Common Properties and Forest Committee. And over those 4 months, I've got to tell you, I've become it's a privilege because I think meeting and observing the committee members and the passion they have for their job. I'm impressed by the credentials we have on that committee, but most of all, I've been impressed by the commitment they have to protecting one of the most important reasons we moved to this place we call home, our forests and our wildlife. And believe me, they are very passionate about doing that. Now, in addition to our common property and forest, this committee has the responsibility for protecting our wildlife. And that's one of the reasons we're here tonight, to talk about that. For sure, wildlife management, I've come to find out, is a very emotional discussion for some people, or an issue for some people. In fact, on the board, we've gotten emails from people who are both passionately for the deer harvest and passionately against it. The one thing I know and observed on the board is they try to take the emotion out of the decision making and they try to deal with the facts. And the panel we have here tonight, I think, is here just to do that, to share the facts with us. And hopefully from that, we can understand what's required to manage the wildlife we have here in the village. So, with that, I think this is a great panel, and I'm going to turn it over to you, Beth. Thanks for pulling it together, and let's get started.
All right, thank you, Tom. My name is Beverly Ellison. I'm the manager of the Permitting and Inspections Department for the POA, and I work directly with the Common Property and Forest Committee. And I would like to introduce you to our panel tonight. We have Dan Webb, who's the chairman of the Common Property and Forest Committee. We've got Bruce Caverly, who's the vice chair of the Common Property and Forest Committee. We've got Todd Johnson from Arkansas Game and Fish. He's one of our wardens. And we have Ronnie Ritter from Arkansas Hunters Feeding the Hungry. So I'm just going to take a minute to go over and let you know what each of us will be talking about. I'm going to discuss briefly what the Common Property and Forest Committee, their responsibilities are. And Bruce will be talking about our forest management program and our wildlife management program. Bruce will handle that also. The rules for the deer harvest program, Dan Webb will be handling that. And then we're going to have comments from our game warden, Todd Johnson, and then comments from Ronnie Ritter regarding feeding the hungry. So our Common Property and Forest Management Committee, their responsibilities include they're chartered and appointed by the POA Board of Directors. We have a 7-member staff committee reporting to the Permitting and Inspections Department. I'm the manager, and our support staff is Brenda Pate, who is our secretary and takes care of all of our records, and she could not be with us tonight. I would like to take this moment to introduce the rest of our Common Property and Forest Committee members, which are down here on the front row. We have Mark West. Mark, stand up. We have Joe Burley. I don't believe Joe is in the audience.
He's not here.
Okay. We have Bruce Douglas, who's down here on the front row. We have David Martin. We have Fred Jonas, who is not here also. And we have Leon Barbie, who is here somewhere. Way back here in the back. Okay, thank you. This committee handles our common property issues, permits, and complaints. We have developed a forest management plan in 2004, and it is ongoing. They have developed a wildlife management program in 2006, and it is ongoing. Our committee members have various skill sets to support our charter. They use outside resources to support our plan and programs. And I know Bill Walker, who is our retired federal forester, he is here in the audience somewhere.
Right over there.
Right over there, okay, Bill is here. We have Ralph Meeker from Arkansas Game and Fish. He's the game biologist. He could not be here tonight because he's in Russellville attending the same type of meeting we're having here tonight. And then we have with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the Waterfowl Division, which we get involved with when we're talking about geese. So that's kind of the overview of what this committee handles and works with. And at this time, I'm going to head and hand it over to Bruce.
Thank you, Beverly. Turn this on. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me now? I gotta stand up, right up close to the mic. I'm gonna start talking about our forest management plan that we developed back in 2004. If you are any student of history of this village, back in the late 1800s and early 1900s, this property was all owned by Dirk's Lumber Company and subsequently by Weyerhaeuser. And they forested this area through the years till about 1950, 1955, somewhere right in that time frame, and then they stopped. As you know, John Cooper, excuse me, purchased about 20,000 acres of that property back in 1969, and it was developed into the village. Subsequently, 3 years later, they bought the other 2,600 acres, which is the east end of the village. As a committee, we began noticing many old-growth pines in the village were dying. Part of it was because back in 2000, if you remember, we had an ice storm here and we lost a lot of trees, both hardwoods and pines. And so we were losing pines by the dozens in the common property areas. We got looking at it, and Ray Beal was on our committee at the time. He also was a federal forester. And he said, you know, these trees, before they fall, they have a value. And we ought to develop that value. With that, he was aware of Bill Walker, who's sitting here in the audience, and invited him out along with his partner, Bill Fenzel. And in 2003, 4, and early part of 5, we put a 12-phase plan together to timber or forest various sections of the village over a 12-year period. Bill Bill Walker and Bill Fenzel wound up walking. Does anybody know how many subdivisions we have in the village? Give me a number. Okay, there are 336 subdivisions in this village. All of those subdivisions have common property. Some is large, some is small. Bill and Fenzel walked every one of those acres, typecasting each of the trees, so we knew whether we had pines, whether we had hardwoods of various types, and so we came up with a plan, and we presented to the board in 2005. This was the plan that was developed, and is still in use today. As of this point, we've gone through 10 subdivisions, or 10 phases. We've got a half of one started, and then we put it on hold because the timber prices at the time, about a year ago, had dropped through the floor. Our objective of this whole plan is to take care of old-growth pines on our common property. Old-growth pines are defined as those that are being between 80 and 100 years old and will soon die off. Their lifespan is probably 100 to 110 years at the most. And so, while they're alive and on the stump, you're better off cutting them down and getting them to the mill to get a value. We decided at the time there would be no clear cutting, which is what timber people do generally with big equipment, go in and clear cut a whole area. You've seen some of that up on Highway 5. This is going to be selective cutting of individual trees that met the requirement of a certain size and width and height. Harvest while there was a value, some was saw timber, some was chip timber. Currently we have completed, like I said, 10 phases. We're going to start I think, this fall to look at finishing the 11th phase. The advantages of a timber program here in the village is it encourages new growth of the forest floor. We, at one point, measured one tree that was about this big a diameter, and within 3 feet, there was another tree about this big in diameter. And it was interesting to note that both trees had the same, almost the same number of rings. In other words, they were the same age. Because the large tree had a canopy up here, no sunlight was getting down to the forest floor, or was getting to the smaller tree, so it couldn't grow. But it grew by ring by ring by ring. So, we really wanted to take care of the old growth pines and let the sunlight get into the forest floor to encourage new growth, encourage the smaller pines to grow, improve the bird and wildlife activity in the area because that gave them some ground cover. And the revenue source that we got from the POA for the 10 seasons that we've done so far is about $1 million, give or take $100,000. That doesn't seem like a lot, but if you let it die and fall on the forest floor, it has no value. So that's where we are with the timber management program. And I thought all of you'd like to know where we are and what we're doing with it. So. Having said that, we can, if you have questions, we can talk about it at the break or after the intermission. I want to turn my attention, or our attention, on to the wildlife management program, deer population and harvesting in Hot Springs Village. I'd like to start with a little bit of history. Back when I began in common property was back in 2002, so I've been on the committee for 14 years. Dan's been on it for 12 or 11, about that. So we've grown up with both of these programs. About in 2005, 2006, we began to identify a problem with deer in the village. The problem was 80 plus automobile accidents in a given year with a normal level of about 30. And that doesn't include the accidents that were not reported to the police or to us and that were reported to insurance companies. So it was a higher number than that. When you start having that number of vehicle accidents, you begin to realize you got more deer or you got people that aren't paying attention. And I don't feel we don't pay attention, so I feel we do pay enough attention. Anyway, with that, and we started talking with Arkansas Game and Fish, and particularly Ralph Meeker, who's a game biologist. We invited him down, and he gave us some indications of what we were facing and what we needed to do. First thing we needed to do was let's find out what the health of the herd is. So he took 10 animals from us back in 2007 to do biological studies on them. They came back was the herd itself, those 10, were reasonably healthy, but they were thin. They had an excess number of ticks, and they had some other issues with their lung disease on 1 or 2 of the animals. So they were basically healthy, but very thin. That kind of indicates that they've got too many animals and not enough feed. So with that, we decided to start looking at how do we deer count. And it's an inexact science, as my friend here, Todd, can explain. You drive around in a rectangular circle, I guess I would call it, of about 8 miles with spotlights in the back of a pickup truck in the evening, in dusk. And you shine lights into the wood, count the eyes, and divide by 2.
The divide by 2 is the important part.
The divide by 2 is the important part. But we came up with some numbers that they provided us with, and it basically said we had about twice as many deer here in the village than we should have to have a healthy herd. And I'll give you those numbers in a few minutes. At that point, again, they said we had between 21 and 2,300 deer for this size of this village. Let me give you some information on the size of this village. We have 26,000 acres, which is we have 26,000 acres. We have 40.625 square miles. A square mile equals 640 acres. If you have 7,600 acres are designated as common property, not including golf courses, lakes, road rights of way. This is all on the economic study that just came out. Those are the numbers out of that study. The village is a gated community, not a fenced-in community, as some have suggested. We are gated, not fenced. So deer have the ability to ebb and flow in and out of the village as they see fit. Based on local habitat types, an ideal deer population should be between 25 and 26 deer per square mile. That's in this village. You go to another area that's open fields, it would be a different number. But for here, they're looking at 25. And this is Arkansas Game and Fish statistics. If you look at 40 square miles times 25 deer or 26 deer, you're looking at 1,000 to 1,100 deer per square mile, or total deer for the village. That's ADFG data, not mine or not ours. Based on these historical spotlight counts conducted in HSV, the current deer population is approximately 1.4 times the ideal population. Right now, we estimate it to be about 1,500 to 1,600 deer in this village. We have had 4 deer harvests over the last 7 years. One in 09, 10, 14, and 15, and we're having one now that started today. Future harvests, if we choose to have them, will be based on the management of the herd for a healthy population and deer counts to get us there. Controlled by the length of time and the number of hunters allowed is how we manage how many we take. Deer statistics, you're going to want to take some notes on this. Female deer have a potential to produce offspring the same year they are born. Okay? 1 or 2-year-old deer, female deer, generally have a single fawn. 2 to 6-year-old females can produce 2 fawns a season, and in some cases, 3. 1 mating pair of deer can produce 15 offspring in a 7-year period. That is 1 breeding pair. Add to that their offspring, also breeding over the following years, the potential population can reach 35 to 40 offspring in that 7-year period of time. That starts with 1 breeding pair. With very little natural predators in this village, if approximately half of our deer, 1,500, are females, those 750 females could potentially produce 500 to 1,000 offspring in a given year. That's ADFG biological data. With very little natural predators in the village and in urban settings, active deer population management is everybody's responsibility in order to maintain a healthy herd and the safety of our residents and pets. Deer overpopulation costs all of us lots of dollars via damaged landscaping, auto accidents, increased veterinarian bills, doctor bills, etc. Question has come up about chronic wasting disease, or CWD. It has not been identified in Hot Springs Village yet. However, the next county to us is Yelp, just a little north of here, and they are under watch for CWD. It's been identified, I believe it's 7, correct me if I'm wrong, Don, 7 counties in the state.
We have definitely identified it in 3 counties, but we're put a buffer around those 3 counties.
Okay.
And putting the same regulations on those other counties, trying to create a buffer so it doesn't come down our way. Sorry. I'm just kidding, I heard you just fine.
You gotta talk to the mic. Going on, high deer densities also promote high tick densities, which increase the risk of several tick-borne diseases to both humans and pets. Rocky Mountain spotted fever, which is called RMSF, Lyme disease, alpha-gal, southern tick-associated rash illness, also known as STARI, and several others I'm not going to try to pronounce. They're pretty technical. I got that from Ralph Meeker. Our committee works closely with Arkansas Game and Fish on a yearly basis, 2 or 3 times during the year and of course during the hunting season. We also work with the federal wildlife agencies, and I'm not going to go into goose hunting or goose management tonight in to save some time so we have time to answer all your questions. Our objective is to effectively and efficiently manage our renewable resource for both residents to enjoy for years to come. That's the deer. It is not this committee nor the POA's intent to eliminate deer from our village. We like having deer around, but need to manage to a healthy number for all to enjoy. That's about as many statistics that I think I can give you that you can absorb, but there's some pretty basic numbers, and you can see how big the deer herd could grow in a very few short years if we don't manage them. At this point, I'd like to turn this over to Dan to go over some of the rules for our deer hunt for this year, and which started today, September 1st. Dan?
Thanks everyone for attending. I'd like to cover the rules which been put in coordination with the Arkansas Game and Fish, and we don't do this ourselves, the Arkansas Bowhunters Association, the Planning and Inspection Department, and of course our committee has also been involved in planning the rules for this for this hunt. The hunt is from September the 1st to December the 10th. The following items are required to participate in the 2016 urban deer hunt. And I just got to say something that if we were here 2 weeks ago in the downpour of rain, and the professionalism of these hunters that came here was extraordinary. And if you know what they do for the proficiency test, they have about a 40-yard target that they have to hit 3 arrows within a circle about this big. 80% of the participants qualified. So they know what they do. The following items are required to participate in the deer hunt. Valid Arkansas big game hunting license, residents or non-residents, 16 years or older. Valid International Bowhunter Education Program card, the IBED, and the valid urban bowhunting tags issued by Arkansas Game and Fish to the city of Spring Village. Now, these 3 licenses that they get cost each deer hunter approximately $100. Included in that are insurance that covers the deer hunter for any incidences that might occur. Valid vehicle dash play cards. Anytime a deer hunter is in the village, he has to display this on his vehicle at all times. And it gives all the information about who he is and how you can be contacted. Shooting proficiency tests they have to pass the shooting proficiency test. They have to shoot from an elevated deer stand 10 feet above the ground. Now let's understand this. They have to be on a deer stand 10 feet above the ground. These deer hunters are shooting, they're probably going to shoot no more than 40, at the max 50 yards. Probably not 50. So they're shooting down to the ground, and they're not shooting probably more than 40 yards out. And I'll explain to you, the bows that they're using for these hunts cost on an average of $100 a bow. So they're not going to indiscriminately be shooting bows out into a forest and lose. Arrows, whatever.
Those are about 500.
Well, more than that.
Yeah.
They must have a name and phone number on the deer stands, feeders, and their cameras. They must remove all deer stands, feeders, and cameras at the end of the hunt. Failure to do so will result in Hot Springs Village confiscating all of the equipment. They use longbow, rescue, or compound bow with at least 35-pound pull from brow heads at least 7 to 8 inch wide. They can use mechanicals is permissible. String locks are not permitted. Crossbows with a minimum draw weight of 125 pounds and mechanical safeties are allowed. They do not leave entrails near trails, streets, or dirt roads. Cover entrails with the leaves. Tampering or theft of property will result in the charges being filed and loss of Hot Springs Village hunting privileges. Residents caught tampering or removing a hunter's equipment will be charged. Hunt in designated areas and at least 50 yards from trails, parks, golf courses, lakes, private residences, public facilities, and all roads. If hunting on private property, you must have a written permission from the property owner. You must hunt at least 50 yards from any occupied dwelling. And when we did the orientation, I think it was Bruce that pointed out that if you're on a 10-foot stand and you can see a house, you're in the wrong place. Hunters must attend the Hot Springs Village orientation to show current license, cards, and signed POA waivers. Maps, discards, which are going to be in their car, will be handed out and questions answered. Deer harvested must be adult deer, and the first deer must be donated to the Arkansas Hunters Feeding the Hungry. The hunters are responsible to deliver to the processor. Both bucks and does are allowed to be harvested. All deer harvested under the Urban Deer Hunt program are considered bonus deer and are not counted in the hunter's seasonal bag limit. No antler restrictions also apply. For that, we will turn it over now to Todd.
You're gonna have to forgive me. Usually, I'm a walker when I talk. I have a hard time sitting down and having my hands folded. A little bit about myself. My name is Todd Johnson. I'm a sergeant with the Arkansas Game and Fish. I am the area supervisor for Garland, Saline, and Hot Spring counties. I'm gonna tell my age a little bit here, but right out of college, I got hired on with the Game and Fish, and I just started my 20th year, July 1. 19 of those years have been done right here in this area. I've worked, and some of you may think you might have recognized me. I've done quite a few programs up here over the years. I've worked 2 separate canines. I was a dog guy for 12 years and canine coordinator for 5 of those, training all the dogs that we have working in the state. I live about 10 minutes out to Eastgate, so I'm real close here to this area. I got a little thunder stole there with the regulations being read, but I just want you to know that when we had this meeting with all the hunters, we were very stern, strict, to the point. One of my partners in Garland County, not much personality, but when you needed him to get a point across, he's the guy to go to. He was real to the point that if you screw up, we will get you and you will be escorted out, plus it's going to cost you some money. Okay, we've made our point to the hunters. What I would like to ask of you, being residents here, is that if you have any issues, please don't confront these people yourself. I would like to think that I'm a trained professional, and I hope I am after 20 years, but that doesn't say much for the organization or myself. Let the trained professionals handle that. Again, I've got 20 years of experience handling hunters in all kinds of situations. Fortunately, we only had very few instances last year to where landowners versus hunter, property owners versus hunters was any kind of confrontation. I will tell you this, we have a lot more confrontations between hunters and landowners outside the village than we have any problems inside the village, which that's good news for y'all and us, and the hunters. When you're, and I'll go off here, off talk just a little bit, and this is on the side of a bow hunter, usually, and of course you can't blanket everybody with this statement, but usually when you have someone that likes to try to harvest deer using archery equipment, they're usually one, seasoned veterans in the hunting game, and two, they're usually some of the most ethical as far as abiding by the regulations, wanting to make that perfect shot for the animal. They're some of the true conservationists as far as hunters go that I've run into in the last 20 years. So I don't know if that eases any minds in the room or not, but just from my 20 years experience, I have less problems out of your archery hunters than I do your black powder and rifle hunters. So they seem to be a little more seasoned, and you have to be. You've got to be pretty good, as my grandfather would say, to sit up in a tree with a stick and try to kill something. So, you have to be pretty dedicated to that sport. So again, we've been real stern with the hunters. I don't think there was anybody leaving out here the other day there was any doubt in their mind what would happen. So we also have a law to protect the hunters. If they are in a legal place where they're legally, if they're on common property, if they have permission from a homeowner or a lot owner to be on that piece of property, you've got to leave them alone. If they're in the legal act of hunting out here, you can't approach them, you can't say anything to them. So it kind of works both ways. So what I'm asking of y'all tonight is if you have a problem, you have any issue at all you have to do is pick up the phone. Like I said, I'm about 10 minutes out the back gate, and we'll be more than happy to handle whatever situations might arise. That's all I have for you.
Phone number?
Is this on?
Yeah.
I'd like to make one comment. We when the hunters came, we passed out these maps. And I know you can't see it from there, but what is designated in yellow are 5-acre areas that they are permitted to go hunt. So we are giving them designated areas that they can go, and it's at least 5 acres.
Okay, I guess we're ready to turn it over to Ronnie Ritter from Arkansas Hunters Feeding the Hungry.
Thanks, Beverly, and thank you all for inviting me here tonight to talk a little bit about Hunters Feeding the Hungry. I always, when I get an opportunity to come and share about what we do, I always just jump at that opportunity. So, a little bit about myself. I've lived in Hot Springs, Malvern, Arkadelphia area for a long time. Longer than you've been born, So, went to school at Henderson, started to work for International Paper in the late 70s. Did a lot of silvicultural work, planted trees, managed timber. About the last 15 years, I got involved in wildlife management. I'm not a biologist, but I learned a lot from other biologists, including Love and Game and Fish guys. So, about the last 15 years, I did that. So, in 2000, we started a program called Arkansas Hunters Feeding the Hungry. So, we've been doing this for 16 years now. So, I'm going to throw out a little statistics, Bruce, about what we've been able to do over the last 16 years. Started out the first year, we did a couple thousand pounds. We didn't have any money, we didn't know where our funding was coming from. Fortunately, Game and Fish came along and gave us $5,000. And so that kind of got us through the first few years. The program continued to grow. The way the process works is a hunter drops off a deer statewide, anywhere. We've got about 60 processors statewide. They drop that deer off and they grind it up into burger. You can do a lot of things with burger. How many different kinds of hamburger helpers is there? Dozens of them. Initially, we did the steaks and the roast and all that, but we found out that the typical recipient might not know what to do with that steak. So we started grinding up into burger. We continued to grow over the next several years. To date, we've done over 750,000 pounds statewide, or about 3 million servings. That's a quarter pound serving. So we think we've been very successful, and we were here at the initial Hot Springs Village Hunt back a few years ago, had our truck sitting up there and started collecting deer. Everything that's harvested in this area stays in this area. We don't ship it back to Little Rock or Memphis or Texarkana or anywhere like that. It all stays here and goes to area food pantries. We work with a couple of schools, Lake Hamilton schools. Last year we worked with Fountain Lake. We worked with Teen Challenge. We worked with several church food pantries. So obviously we can't provide enough for every food pantry because there's lots of them even here in Garland County. So everything that's harvested stays here. Last year there was 233 deer dropped off at the refrigerated trailer. Thanks to the Game and Fish, we borrowed their refrigerated trailer. It's sitting right now at the Cortez Fire Station. It'll be sitting there for probably a couple of months. As it gets into November, December, there's not near as many deer harvested, so it'll be there for a couple of months. We try to make it easy for the hunter to drop off that deer, and it's been highly successful. We have other urban hunts across the state where we don't have that trailer sitting there, and we don't get near as many donations. But there was a little over 500 deer harvested here last year, so if we got 233 dropped off, there was others that were dropped off at some of the processors, especially later in the year. So we probably got about half, at least half, maybe a little bit more of the total deer harvest. And that produced about between 8,000 and 9,000 pounds just here in the Garland, Saline County area. So again, it all stays right here. It's been very successful. It's early. This is an early season for a lot of these food pantries. Typically, it's October, November before we get any meat. So this urban hunt is especially helpful to a lot of the needy people in the area. We're just proud to be a part of this. These urban hunts are about 20 to 25% of our total take for the year. We typically get a couple thousand deer each year donated statewide, and I think it's over 200,000 deer harvested. So we still don't get much. We could do a lot better. So that's why we encourage all these hunters we'll take them on. I know they've got to donate that first one, but we had some hunters last year that harvested a lot more than that and gave us most of them. So that's just a little bit about what we do, and we try to be very good at what we do, and we try to help as many food pantries. We give this to the food pantries. We don't charge them anything. We do have to raise money for processing costs, and that's a challenge in itself. If you run a nonprofit 501c, raising money is a big issue. If we have hunters out here, I always like to say this: if you buy a hunting license, there's an opportunity to donate $1, $5, or $10 when you buy your license. When you go and buy your license, be sure and tell them you want to donate money up front, because sometimes they don't ask you. So that's what help funds our program. Plus, we do a lot of other things as well. So, thank you.
Okay, we're ready to turn it back over to Marcy.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. All righty. What is the plan to control or eliminate the geese on the golf courses? Did you want to go through that today, or did you want to do that in
I can cover it briefly.
Okay. Eat the mic.
Thank you. We have a program to try to control the number of geese in the village, and that starts in January, February of each year. And we use our golf course superintendents and our lakes managers to identify where the geese are and where their nests are. And we have to go through the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to get what they call an egg addling program started. That's to control the birth rate of the geese. It's a deprivation order, and we get that each year. Our intent is not to kill or eliminate all of the births of new geese, but we do have about 50 geese in the village that are residents year-round. We also get in the springtime flocks that came in. Last year we had an unbelievable number that wound up on Balboa Golf Course and Coronado Golf Course, and we had at one hole alone 90 goslings on that hillside. And we've got to control those. They do some damage to the golf courses and to the lakes. Their feces in the lakes will eat the oxygen from the lake, and that affects the fish, and the nitrogen allows for aquatic growth in the lake, which we're trying to eliminate. So yes, we have a program. I can cover that more in detail back towards the end of this year in the beginning of next year. But our program starts in January, February, identifying and addling eggs in April and May, March and April, and hopefully watch the maturation point at that point. That's the program we have.
Thank you. I actually had a question while Todd was speaking. You said you're right outside the gate, just call you anytime. Is there a phone number you want to give out here?
Yes, ma'am, I sure will.
All right, everybody ready? Go ahead.
It's gonna be 1-800-482-9260, and that's to our dispatch center,
9260.
9262.
So if there's an issue, we go right to that number, or do we call you, Beverly?
You need to call the 1-800 number and they'll dispatch him out. He will be the closest one for us.
Okay, did everybody get that? One more time, 1-800
482-9262.
9260. 62. See, okay. I didn't get that. 1-800.
482-9262.
9262. Okay? All right. The state has restrictions on number of deer harvested. Zone 11, Garland County, below data from AGFC website. Zone bag limit, 3 deer, which may include 2 buck with archery, muzzle-loaded or modern gun, 3 does with archery. Last year, Hot Springs Village awarded 1 individual for killing 26 deer. Why would the POA allow 290 mostly non-HSB members into a gated community hunting with no restrictions, especially when even the AGFC states no count is accurate?
Let Bruce and Todd maybe both want to answer that.
I was going to let Todd, but basically an urban deer hunt is separate from state regulations. Excuse me, thank you.
Eat the mic.
An urban deer hunt is entirely different from state regulations. We have to follow their rules, but the game bag limits differ in an urban hunt. And Todd, I'll let him address that specifically.
Well, and the reason that, you get outside the gates, we have antler restrictions, we have restrictions on how many deer you can kill in a certain area, but when you're trying to eliminate a large population, we take off all those restrictions. And 2, the hunters are limited in here with archery tackle, which you're not going to be as successful with archery equipment than you would be if you had obviously a rifle. So that's part of the reasons that there's no restrictions inside the village, is because our number 1 goal is to reduce the numbers.
And there's an officer here. Were we going to bring him up to speak or speak to his presence?
He's
Or
here for moral support. He did not want to be up on stage. He's with our panel, but he's wanted to remain down there.
would you like to speak to why he's here and how our officers get involved?
Our officers get involved when there's altercations between a hunter and another hunter, or a hunter and a property owner. We ask everyone to try to remain calm and respectful to each other and try to work through whatever problem we're having, but sometimes that doesn't work because people's tempers flare over these issues. So they are a big part of what we do when we have this deer harvest. They're very much involved all year long, as well as our fire department, this committee, Common Property and Forest Committee, Game and Fish, and Feed the Hungry, the Arkansas Bow Hunters Association. There's just numerous people working all year long just to get to this point where the season starts and they can actually be out here with the bows and arrows and actually harvesting the deer. So a lot of people are working behind the scenes all year long, and especially during the hunt when they're out here hunting, to make sure everyone is staying safe. The hunters are safe, the property owners are safe, your guests are safe. There's just a lot more behind the scenes, detail-oriented things going on, and most people do not realize that. But none of us could do this on our own. It takes all of these organizations and groups working together to make this a success.
I think it's mindful to know also that that there's minimal incidents that have occurred within the last 4 hunts that we've had.
No problems.
I was gonna ask, can you explain, can you give me an example of where there might be an issue where our officers would get involved?
I can give you a specific one from last year. A hunter was in his deer stand hunting, had parked his truck on the side of the street. Another hunter came along, decided that he wasn't pleased with that. So he rummages around on the vehicle until he finds the hidden key. Finds the key, unlocks the truck, gets in it, and moves it down the road. So charges were filed. That's a one probably extreme example.
Now, if, for the residents then, if there's an issue, they would be calling our police department phone numbers?
Yes.
Right, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. Alrighty,
And don't call the 911 number.
it's not a 911, call into our.
It's 0011 922.
Okay. In the last year, especially last fall and winter, we saw many pine trees die, often in clusters of 3 to 10 trees. The trees turn yellowish for several weeks, then die. Is this caused by a disease, the pine beetle, or what? Is it expected to get worse?
Okay. We lose a certain number of pines a year to a beetle called the Ips beetle. One of the gentlemen on our committee is an entomologist. And so we use him to go out and take a look at the tree bark and find out what we've got for beetles. Everybody's concerned about the pine bark beetle. We have none here. There's none in this state right now. And the closest area to have any is East Texas, and Alabama, I believe, is the other state that's got some. We are fortunate that we're part of the Ouachita National Forest. We constantly have the National Forest Aviation Group in the air all the time around us. They spot areas where pines are dying at the top. And let's say there's a dozen trees with it's gotten brown at the top. That's an area of concern. They will contact us and we'll go out and take a look at it. We'll get with Bill Walker, whatever. But we don't have any pine bark beetles here now. But we do have Ips beetles, and they're natural. Not much we can do about it.
Thank you. There are many uprooted trees on the undeveloped lots in POA common grounds that were in the path of, the 2011 tornado. Terrible eyesore and negative property value impact on neighboring developed properties. What can be done to get these lots cleaned up?
You want to take care of this, or you want me to?
I'll let you take care of that, Bruce.
Oh,
Go
good.
ahead.
First of all, trees that are down on private property, we cannot touch. We have no control over down trees on private property. However, we have in the past, after the tornado, contacted the owners of those lots, told them what happened, and requested that they contract with somebody, and we gave them names of contractors that could go in and clean up the deadfall. Some did, some did not. The ones that did not, we have no recourse on. It's a fact of life. And if it's on common property, we can handle that. We can take care of that.
And that's where we'd be calling Beverly's office?
Call Beverly's office, she'll get a hold of one of us, Dan or myself, or Mark, and we figure out what we're gonna do next.
Okay. I know it's a okay, golf question. How long is the lifespan of a deer, and what percentage do die from disease, old age, or predators?
Okay, Todd.
Yeah, we'll give that to Todd.
Well, the average life expectancy in a perfect environment where there are no cars and there are no hunters and there's plenty to eat and plenty to drink is between 9 and 11 years. And what happens is their an animal that has to grind their food. And so what ends up happening to them is they grind their teeth down until they don't have any more teeth left, and they can't go to the dentist and get them some fake chompers. So unfortunately, starvation is not far behind that. Disease, I'll tell you, we have a pretty healthy deer population here in Saline and Garland counties. We'll go on very few calls a year that deal with any kind of disease. What you see a lot that we probably get more calls on or anything are the warts that get on the deer, and the guys start skinning them, and they're afraid to eat the meat, which it's just it's no different than the people that you know that have the skin tag type. It's the same, but just deer get it. But so hopefully, with the buffer zone that we now have around the 3 counties that we found CWD in, hopefully we can remain disease-free down there.
Thank you.
Feeding deer in the village, as far as us as residents, is considered a no-no, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Are there, number one, is there any consequences if someone reports someone doing that? And then number two, how does that rule change or evolve for the deer hunter?
Arkansas is looking at changing the rules of feeding the deer to make it unlawful
For who? For everyone?
for everyone.
Even the hunters?
Well,
Oh, yeah, well, it would be for everyone. But as it is right now, there is no law restricting anyone from feeding the deer. You have to understand also that the FDA does not regulate the feed that they're giving the deer. So you don't know what you're feeding them in a lot of cases.
But soon there will be laws. Todd, did you want to say something?
well, just this year with the CWD, I won't call it an epidemic, but the CWD being found up in North Arkansas, we have started limiting in those areas, and within that 10-county buffer zone, we've started limiting on how long deer can be fed. Because the last thing that you want in a contaminated, diseased area is a bunch of deer gathering all at one small little spot, touching noses. But as far as baiting statewide, I don't foresee in the next 10 years that I have worked that it going away without CWDs found in other counties. So.
Thank you.
Don't we have CWD in Polk County?
It's in Boone County, in Newton County, and in Pope, P-O-P-E.
Oh, okay.
That's one of the buffer counties around.
Just a side note on that, they just did a 52 deer roadkill survey in Polk County. And the reason that we choose roadkills is because most of the deer that are going to be positive with CWD get sick, disorientated, so it's a really good chance that they get hit by a car. And we did a 52 deer sampling, and they all come back negative, which was, we're very happy about that. We did 2 months, almost 3 months of sampling in Garland, Saline, all central Arkansas, and a record number of, we got more deer in Garland and Saline counties than all the rest of the counties in that survey group combined, and not one positive case, which lets me know that we're disease-free.
Okay, thank you. When hunters call and report a deer harvested, the official doesn't always record the deer as being in the Hot Springs Village urban hunt, only the county of the kill. Has this issue been addressed with those officials answering the phone? If not, is the harvest accurate or inaccurate?
Well, whenever you're dealing with hundreds of thousands in the numbers, of course, I don't know of anybody that could be 100% on when you're talking 200,000+ deer that are being called with counties, sex, how many points on the antlers. We actually hire an outside company just because we can't handle it internally. We pay about $3.5 million a year to an outside company that when a hunter harvests an animal, he's able to pick up the phone and dial a number and give that data. And of course, when you're talking about human error, I wouldn't say that it was 100% accurate, but I would say it's fairly accurate, and it's the best system that we have right now.
And Todd, there is a zone for this urban hunt.
Yeah,
There's a separate zone.
this urban hunt, when the hunters fill out their information, and we also have an app, and that's the greatest thing since sliced bread, is that the hunters can literally, while they're looking at their harvest, can go to that app and type in the information themselves. And Hot Springs Village has its own zone, and when you pull up what county you're in, it will give you the zones for that county. Like in Garland County, we have Zone 11, Zone 13, and then a Hot Springs Village zone. So it's pretty user-friendly, and excuse me, but I call it kind of idiot-proof when you have 3 choices. Surely you can get 1 out of 3 right where you're at.
So we,
One additional method of control is that of the 6 urban hunt county or cities that are around here, the State Fish and Game provides us with deer tags that are identified from 1, in our case, I think we got 1,000 this year. 1,000 tags.
I think it's usually
1,000 tags, and they're numbered from 1 to 1,000, and they say HSV Urban Deer Hunt, or it says Cherokee Village Urban Deer Hunt. So when you report your deer kill, you're reporting your tag number, and it has to be noted on the back of this form also, which becomes part of the record.
Right, and they only issue 2 at a time. So if that hunter harvests more than 2, he has to go back and get an additional 2 tags. So it's not like they just hand out 10 tags at a time. You know, because you have some hunters that may get to hunt a lot more than others and be out here every day that harvests 18 at the end of the season, and you may have another hunter that may not use a tag. So.
We gave every hunter this time 2, and if they turn in 2 deer with 2 tags, at the fire station, they can pick up 2 more tags, and they're recorded. So we control it through the tag system.
so I'm just gonna add to that, when we had our orientation meeting with the hunters about 2 weeks ago, we try to address that you're not in a normal hunt, you're hunting in an urban hunt, and when you check your deer zone is HSV for Hot Springs Village. So we're trying to make sure they are checking them correctly, so we can get an accurate count.
All right, it's 7:50. Would you like about 5 more minutes of questions? Okay. Common property. Can we have controlled burns scheduled for them?
No.
This is gonna go really fast, okay? How many hunters are there, and how many deer can each hunter harvest?
There is no limit to what each hunter can take. As far as how many,
We started out with 290, and we had about 272 qualified to hunt in this hunt. So 270 is your approximate.
We had about the same number last
I think
year.
it was 265
Last year?
last year.
But in actuality, there's only probably about 100, 125 through the course of the whole period that actually did the hunt. There's some who qualify here and get tags here, but they don't even hunt here. So
Right.
it's hard to get an exact count of how many is actually going to actually hunt.
Is hunting allowed on private property in the village?
Hunting on private property is allowed if they have a written permission from the owner.
And do they hand that
No.
into you, or?
They have to have it on their person at all times.
Yeah, and that's a statewide law. If they're not, obviously, if they're a resident of the village and they're hunting on their own property, they don't have to have permission from themselves.
There is a caveat to that.
But as far as the law goes, they have to have that written permission from the property owner and or the homeowner, that they have the right to be there.
Excuse me. The caveat to that is, most lots here in the village are quarter acre, third acre lots. You're gonna be pretty close to the 50-yard line to your side lot. And you really don't wanna be hunting in a neighborhood with your own quarter acre lot. That's not good, smart decision making.
That's kind of what the second question is. I'm not against the hunt, but I am against hunting in the village, so close to the trails, neighborhoods. Is it fair to the homeowners to have to see deer lines and hunters for 3 months of the year? Why can't we make it farther away from the residents? Or,
I'm not sure I totally understand. They have to be 50 yards from a roadway. They have to be 50 yards from a golf course or a lake, 50 yards away from a trail or a residence. We'd had some issues last year with people complaining about the entrails being visible from wherever they were. We've asked the hunters, if that's the case, make sure you put the entrails away from a trail and cover it with leaves. Now remember, those entrails will be there about 2 days and they're gone. They are gone. So, it's not a big issue in most of us concerned.
Also, the maps that we gave the hunters is a 5-acre plan. So 5 acres is pretty large.
okay. Why don't we have a place in the village where we can take leaves and brush? It's dangerous to dump them in the common area.
We probably need to refer that to Public Works, they kind of
Okay?
handle the leaves.
We don't have no leaves.
Will you be able to do any or additional thinning of common property for density reduction?
I'm assuming you're talking about forest management?
That,
Thinning of
and you've
common
explained
property?
that, yeah.
We have not done anything now for about 1.5 years due to the mill prices being so low. We hope, if I can get it through the board, to start again this fall or the winter time, working with Bill Walker, and we could finish up the 11th and to go on to 12th, and then start back over again with the 1st. So it's a rotating basis over a 12-year period that we're trying to go around. I'd like to get that program restarted. It's not an issue of money, in my opinion. It's a matter of health of the forest and continued good growth of fresh pines and hardwoods.
We only have 4 questions left. 2 of them have been answered already. In Diamante, all lots are privately owned. How are hunters getting permission from owners if they can't get phone numbers? Hunters bringing in girlfriends and others to their hunting spot. Hunters are using the outdoors
I'm
to...
gonna let you answer the girlfriend part.
Bruce will take care of that for us.
The problem of hunters using the outdoors for, as,
A latrine?
latrines. And setting up their equipment much closer than 50 yards from occupied residence. And would it bring, if the hunter leave any, and won't it bring in bears if the hunters leave any entrails?
I'm not sure what you're asking.
That was about a 14-part question there.
Maybe we should defer that.
Yeah, we'll break this down and then answer
I'd like
each
to
one
answer it if I
individually.
understand the question.
Well, the question was, kind of, issues of hunters, using
Defecating in
out,
the woods?
I guess so. But you get the same problem with our golfers sometimes, you know, and, And there were 3 or 4 different things there, but it was,
Hopefully the hunters aren't drinking near as much liquids as the joggers.
We'll try to break that question, all those down and defer them, the answers till later.
okay. And feeding, oh, that, we already did that one. Well, what are you doing about disease in the forest? I've had at least 20 trees die on my lot. Lots are on either side. None of them have been mature pines. They've been beautiful, probably. Also many smaller hardwood and pines. I see this as a serious problem.
Ooh, without seeing it, I'd have a hard time trying to answer that question.
Should
My
I-
suggestion is, anybody who's got an issue with common property, and trees, call Beverly or call the Planning Inspections Department, or Permitting Inspections as it's now called. And they'll get a hold of one of us who'll come out and take a look at it and try and identify what the issue is for you. We want you to be comfortable with common property, but, we don't have all the answers.
Okay. So this gentleman should be calling you,
Right.
okay? And if you don't know who you
Call
are,
into Beverly at the 922-5559, that's her number. And she can take the information and pass it out to Dan or myself, and we'll, one of our other guys will take a look at it.
okay? That's it? Thank you so much.
Thank you.